Welcome to Inquiry into Self. So, lately there's been a lot of unrest about political sides. And there's also this underlying essence of what we are that is expressing itself in everything that's happening. And as well as we may know it, sometimes we forget. So, this is an inquiry to help us remember. And I'm going to do a few of these. And first, I just want to remind us that when we're projecting that there's a danger out there, it's actually a discomfort with a wildness that we know intimately, even as part of ourselves. In other words, when we think that something out there is so bad, we have to wall up against it. It's because we know that same wildness within ourselves and we don't trust it. Once we know that wildness within ourselves and we do trust it, it's no longer so scary when we find it out there. And I'm speaking from experience. This is not a theory. That wildness that we see in others, we know first in ourselves, and that's where we discover that it feels so out of control. So, what do we do? What do we do with these situations? Well, here's an example. Suppose the complaint is they should not make threats. You can look at whatever's happening politically, and maybe you're seeing something where there's somebody who's making these big threats and you don't want them to make those threats. It feels like they're taking on a power that they shouldn't have. So you just stop. That's a really good place to start inquiry. He or she should not make those threats. Okay, so let's just sink into what does this teach us about ourselves? And where is there the possibility of using this for more freedom? So we've definitely decided that out there is bad. That should not happen, right? And in that moment, we create this constraint where something is dangerous in our world. Sometimes it hasn't even actually affected us yet. We really don't know. We can't actually project the future. We really don't know what's about to happen. We don't know if that threat is going to happen. We really don't know how it's going to affect us. We can project, but we haven't lived through it yet. So we're actually exacerbating something because we're adding a whole bunch of thoughts. Now, who is doing that? Who is really causing the misery in the moment? My own thoughts. My own thoughts are taking something from history and deciding it's going to happen again, or taking what somebody's words are and deciding it's actually going to happen like they say, which of course it rarely does. I'm taking words and I'm putting them into reality and deciding how that reality is going to affect me, and then I'm getting miserable about it. Wow, I am terrorizing myself when I do that. I am the terrorizer to myself. And when we let that sink in, we start to realize that terrorizers aren't just out there. Terrorizing is in here too. Why am I doing that to myself? What good do I think is going to come of this? And we could go through a whole list, right? But is that good? really being achieved by putting myself into a place of terror? I've told the story of when I was a little girl, that heavy being that was invisible that would come and lie on top of me when I was in bed. And it taught me to just lie there and wait and see. Was I really going to be suffocated? It turned out I never was. It's an amazing skill to be in the present moment and to develop that skill in a way that we can share it as a way of being in the world with others. Okay, so there's one way of looking at this situation of the threat, noticing that I'm the threatening presence equally. What about another way to look at it? To say they shouldn't make these threats. Okay, well, what about they should make these threats? Why should they be making these threats? And when I start to look at somebody who's making threats, I end up looking first at, well, when have I made similar types of threats? When have I been in a place when I was so scared, so terrified, so out of control, whatever it was, that I yelled and made threats? Or if I can't find a place, I can find what would be the situation that would drive me to that. Suppose I saw my children in harm's way. It would be from a place of feeling powerless, of feeling totally taken advantage of feeling being overrun over and over and over. And could this voice that's issuing the threats represent people in that state? Now, of course, we automatically jump up and say, no, this is a very powerful person. Well, just pause. Angry voices usually are not standing alone. Usually they actually do represent other people. And could it be that there are people that feel overrun, that feel like they've been ignored over and over, that feel like they are in danger? If they said it a different way, instead of making the threats, if they came forth and said and presented their case in a way that maybe is more appealing socially, we might listen. And in fact, probably you can, and I found this to be true. Anytime I find somebody who's making big threats, I can actually find somebody who's expressing something similar, but in a more socially palatable way. So I can research and find out, who is this that they're representing? Who are these people that want this voice? And as I go towards more and more understanding, I see the desperation that they're perceiving. And again, maybe it's not anything actually happening. It's them projecting just like I was projecting. That as I start to understand these people that the threatening person is representing, then I reach a new place of understanding. Yes, this person should be making these threats. More understanding is needed here, and that is the best way they know at this moment. And then it can go the whole distance. Those threats should happen, it goes the whole way. What if things do get what I'm imagining to be so bad, right? What if these horrific things I'm imagining happen? Okay, now it's threatening myself to dwell on this But sometimes to just relieve the fear totally, I just take myself the whole way. Okay, yes, it's happening supposedly, let's just say. And then I go to, it is supposed to happen. And when I seriously consider these things happening, I think, in every apparently negative circumstance, there has been good. I'd like to say 9/11 shouldn't have happened, but 9/11 happened. And as a result, New York City was a totally different place for several months. There was a sense of community. There was a sense of knowing what really matters. There was a pulling together. Every time that there is some apparent disaster, there's also a rising up of human togetherness, resourcefulness. There's the kindness that comes out that we forget sometimes that we have. So I'm not advocating we go around, obviously, and create havoc so that we can create opportunities for human kindness. But when unavoidable havoc happens, and fighting will produce havoc. If there's fighting that's going one way and we try to resist it by fighting the other way, it just is havoc, right? Anything won by strength alone will be maintained only by strength alone. So, I'm not advocating they havoc when it happens, because someone has to say, okay, we'll go with this until we all can see its faults. We can all see how it doesn't work. Once we go with something to just demonstrate it's not going to work, but that's the only way we can, because there's a majority who want to try it. So we go with it, and there's the havoc. Out of the havoc comes the clarity, comes the kindness, comes the learning together. So that's the nature of humanity. That's my own nature. Yes, I learned some things the easy way by listening to somebody else, but many times I also learned something the hard way. So if I had to learn the hard way, I had to learn the hard way. And then somehow it all worked out. It all works out because what we are doesn't die. What we are moves eventually towards wisdom and love. So once I'm more solidly noticing that, oh yeah, that's true. When something horrific happened, so much light came out of it. Then I don't have to be afraid. I see that what we are rises up through any ashes. So I don't have to be a threat in return. I don't have to be the one controlling in return. I don't have to threaten myself and terrorize myself. I can know the peace that passes understanding. And yes, I can be the voice of peace. And I can let the process unfold because peace is inevitable.